right, let's get started. Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. I had to think for a second. I know it was just the weekend, but sometimes the days just blend in a little bit. We usually have another person here, my partner in crime. She is not here with us today. Susan Murphy, she's a little bit out sick, and we're sending all of our good positive thoughts to her. So you're kind of stuck with me for this morning, which is okay. We'll get through it. My name is Immigrant. I am the Title III Multilingual Learner Program Manager for SCDE, and I'm just going to go over a lot of the information with you regarding ML and Immigrant Subgrant. Some of the information is going to feel that we are just kind of doing an overview. Some of them is just a breaking down of what it is that we need to look into and what the applications are supposed to look like. And feel free to just ask questions. I'm going to really go through a lot of the details, but if there are any questions, please go ahead and ask away. So the first thing we want to do is to kind of do a little pre-test of your knowledge. We're not going to necessarily be asking the questions. I want you to just start to think about them, and we're going to review these statements at the end. So testing your knowledge, just thinking, Title III Part A funding must follow, supplement, not supplant requirements. So it's kind of, is it true? Is it false? What do you think? True. Okay. Title III Part A funding has 3 subawards for LEAs. Is it true or is it false? Not going to tell you the answer yet. Title III Part A funding can be used for required translation and interpretation services. Districts that receive less than 10,000 in allocations must form a consortium to accept funding. All right, so let's get to it. But first I want to just do a quick sound check. Can you guys hear me in the back okay? Perfect. All right, so Title III Part A subgrants. One of the most important things that you need to remember about the Title III Part A subgrants is that they have to be spent and focusing on 3 areas. First one is 100, which is instruction of multilingual learners. 2 is 220, which is professional development. And 3 is 188, which is family engagement. So when you completed your applications for ML funding, all 3 areas must be touched. There is no minimum or maximum amount for each area, but each district has to spend funding using the 3 areas. All right, so how are multilingual learners and immigrant students identified? What we're looking at is your definition of multilingual learners first. So multilingual learners are identified by being aged 5K through 21. A language other than English is listed on the Home Language Survey. The Home Language Survey is completed 1 time at the initial enrollment of a multilingual learner or any student. And they have, which is step 2 of identification, which is a qualifying ELP score. When they get screened, if they qualify, then they are identified as a multilingual learner. So they have to have all those 3. Then when we look at immigrant student is a little bit different. We are looking at students that are aged 3 to 21. They are not born in any state, United States, Puerto Rico, or District of Columbia. And they have not attended 1 or more schools in any of those states for more than 3 cumulative years. The reason why we say 3 cumulative years is because the students, sometimes you have students that will come, be with us for a year, leave the country, and return. So when they return, they are then on their 2nd immigrant year. They are still qualifying as an immigrant for their immigrant funding. Okay? So then when we look at the subgrants, we have multilingual learner. The multilingual learner, it's basically any district that has at least one multilingual learner will receive or qualify for multilingual learner subgrant. The allocations are allocated through a per pupil formula, and there is a 10,000 minimum requirement. For the immigrant, on the other hand, only districts that have a significant increase will qualify with immigrant students, and that is also based on a formula. Once we go through that, then districts receive allocations. They will likely change from year to year because it is based on immigrant increase for that particular subgrant. And then students, not districts, receive like smaller amounts of subgrants, but with a higher allocation. So you have a smaller number of districts qualifying for this subgrant, but now they receive a larger amount. So one of the things that is important to remember is that if a district qualifies this year, there's no guarantee they will qualify for the following year, right? So it's making sure that when you are allocating and you're setting your, plans for all of your students, you are not accounting for that particular funds that you're like, oh, I received 20,000 this year. Most likely I'll receive another 20,000 next year. There is no guarantee. It's based on the increase of your immigrant students. And then when we look at the formula for all of the subgrants, we have the Title III funds. There's 100% of the subgrant, 95% of the Title III funds are really dispersed to the LEAs. 80% of that 95% is for multilingual learner funding. And then when we look at the other one is for immigrant funding. And all of those are allocated to your LEA subgrant. The other 5% or 175,000 really stays within the state, and that's really for direct administrative costs and all of the other state level activities plans. Right. So what does that look like for FY25? When you look for that one, you see that immigrant subgrants receive pretty much about 966,000. And then you're looking at the multilingual learner received a little over 5 million. And that's what was dispersed based on the formulas that we have. Any questions so far? All right. So let's keep going. We're going to talk a little bit more about the multilingual learner subgrant. And this one, the formula, and this is going to make more sense because I do have a slide with an example, but I wanted to make sure you are fully aware of how that works. And then we have the total SCML allocation divided by the total number of eligible multilingual learners in South Carolina. Those are your qualifying districts, and that determines the per pupil amount. And then we find each district that is qualifying or accepting allocations. You're looking at the per pupil amount times the number of MLs, and that determines the ML allocation per district. The ML learners that we are really looking at, how we identify and choose each one of them that is qualifying students, you're really looking at the English language proficiency that is listed on the SC student information page. That is your active multilingual learners. Either they have a score from 1 to 6, or they have a score that is coded AL1 and AL2. Okay? Those are the only ones that we are looking for this qualification. So the formula looks like this. We take the number of the MLs from the 180-day count. And the first example, we're looking at a district that has 55 multilingual learners. And then you multiply per pupil amount, which is just a little over $86. And that's the total amount of allocation that district is going to receive. Okay? The second example, the district has a greater number of multilingual learners, 1,464. We multiply by the same amount that is inside per pupil, and that shows how much the district is going to receive. Okay? All right, so just as a friendly reminder, what we're looking at is ensuring that all three areas are being utilized in each of those grants. So each district needs to use the three areas: 100 for instruction, 220 professional development, and 188 family engagement. So in the ML subgrant, we have a few additional details. When we're looking at it, we're making sure that it's available to all of the districts, although it is not encouraged, but districts may waive those funds if they choose to. The allocation must be a 10,000 or more, and some districts may form a consortium to accept funds to meet those $10,000 minimum requirements. This is only applicable, the consortium, it's really only applicable to the Multilingual Learner Subgrant, not the Immigrant one. There is a consortium form, intent to form a consortium form that needs to be submitted to our office. Right now, you're looking at an older, outdated template. We are in the process of updating all of our templates. This will be updated for your FY26. Okay. All right, we're going to go to Immigrant. Are we good with ML subgrant? Any questions about ML subgrant? Good? All right. So Immigrant formula, again, it's all based on formula. When we're looking at the Immigrant formula, this is a little bit more intricate because we have to account for a lot of different things. So bear with me with this one, and then it will make more sense when we look at the example. So the average number of immigrant children and youth in each district, it's looked for 2 years. So the 2 years preceding that fiscal year. This information is pulled from the data entered in PowerSchool, again, from that 180-day count by district. It is multiplied by 10% to identify the minimum immigrant requirement based on the 10% increase. And then the next thing that we look at is we compare the current school year 45-day count to the minimum requirement, which is that 10% increase. And then additionally, some years, a minimum raw amount or raw number increase must be matched to limit the number and increase the size of the subgrant. So for this one, for FY25, we have 50 student increase requirement. Okay? In previous years, the numbers may have been a little bit different, but for FY25, we've had a 50 student increase requirement. The information is pulled from three places. We're looking at birth country, we're looking at U.S. school entry date, and we are looking at that exception box, your immigrant funding in the U.S. 3 full academic years. Remember how I mentioned early on that for an immigrant student, they can be in the district or in the schools for 3 cumulative years. So if a student leaves and returns, then this box needs to be checked. All right, so continue with the formula. There are more steps to the formula. If the district has met the minimum immigrant requirement, then it is eligible to receive the immigrant subgrant allocation. The number of eligible immigrant children is identified by adding the immigrant students in all qualifying districts. And the per pupil amount is multiplied by the number of eligible immigrants in each district and added to the base allocation to determine each district's allocation. Can I quiz you on all of this? No. So this is kind of what it looks like. We have a spreadsheet that you're always able to look and see all of the allocation and how this formula was calculated for each one of the districts and who qualify for. So the example shows that the district in 2022-23 had 409 students, immigrant students. And then in 2023-24, they had 273. We averaged the 2 years. We got the number of 341. And then we got the increase of 10% of at least 34 students in there. Then we have the minimum requirement as being 375 because we add those numbers. And then we look at the current immigrant student calculation for that district for 2024-25 is 727 students. The minimum increase was met, yes. The minimum raw number, for students, which is 50, was met, yes. Then therefore, the total number of eligible immigrant students, 727, gets multiplied by a per pupil amount, and then therefore they get 30,000-ish at total of funds. So we had for the immigrant for FY25, we had 28 districts that qualified for immigrant fundings this year. And that was that total that you saw early on in blue that shows 966,000 in average. Any questions? We good so far? All right. You're making this my job really easy. I love it. So then we're going to continue on with the details. The significant increase in immigrant children and youth, basically it allows for a larger allocation with a smaller number of districts. So allow these districts to receive a larger amount rather than smaller ones. The state determines the formula, and the formula gets adjusted based on needs and immigrant population changes. And again, just that friendly reminder, it changes from year to year because it is based on that percentage of increase of all of your immigrant students per year. So it is not something that any district should just really feel that they are secured with that, okay? All right, so let's talk a little bit about allowable uses for immigrant funds. So when we're looking at immigrant funds, the big thing that you're going to see at the end of each one of these bullets is immigrants, youth, and children. Not all immigrant students are multilingual learners. Not all multilingual learners are immigrant students. So very, very important. While you may have a program or activity in your district that you want to utilize immigrant funds, if you are serving students who are not immigrants, but they are MLs, then we are having a little bit of an issue with that allocation, right? So we have to make sure that you are serving your immigrant students with whatever activity that you are implementing with immigrant funds. When you are doing with your ML, you may have the same issue. So if you are using ML funding, you cannot use for immigrants who are not MLs. So very, very important to keep that in mind at all times. So in here you can do family literacy, or parent and family outreach, like training activities to be able to support those families who are have those immigrant students. Just creating something before after school, it's not an issue. It is a great way to help those families accommodate and kind of feel comfortable in your district, navigating the American schools. Anything that you're doing with those families is okay too, and that will be your 188. You're looking at recruitment of and support for personnel, including teachers and paraprofessionals who have been specifically trained or being trained to provide services to immigrant children and youth, okay? So it's not your extra, I'm going to use these funds to be able to just get an extra teacher to work with multilingual learners, okay? Just keeping that in mind. Provisions of tutorials, mentoring, and academic or career counseling for immigrant students. And identification, development, or acquisition of curriculum materials that are going to support those students. And continue on with those. Basic instruction services that are directly attributable to the presence of immigrant students. So anything that is going to support instruction can also be utilized. We're looking at other instructional services that are designed to assist immigrant students to achieve elementary or secondary schools. So you may have specific tools, specific resources that are going to really be designated just for those students. And then we're looking at activities coordinated with the community-based organizations, institutions of higher education, private sector entities, anything that is going to now connect and enhance those opportunities for immigrants. Okay? So, you say about what is allowable, let's talk a little bit what is not. Okay? Just ensuring there are a lot of needs when you see your immigrant students, and we want to be able to meet them all, but some of them are not allowable. First one that we often get questions of is about purchasing hygiene products. It is not allowable. We're looking at purchase of translation devices for translation and interpretation for students and families outside of instructional purposes. The key there is outside of instructional purposes. Can you utilize these funds to purchase potentially devices and tools and resources for translation? As long as it is mainly focused and its sole purpose is really for instruction, then yes. It is important to also take into account before looking into purchasing anything for translation that one, we have a lovely list in a document for you to be able to look at of some considerations before considering purchasing those types of tools. Can the student read? And is the device going to be really that helpful? Can the student read in their native language? Is it going to really enhance the opportunity of language acquisition? Is it being used in conjunction with English resources, or are we trying to look to just replace all English to only provide the native language? So just really keeping those things in mind. Cover costs for required translation and interpretation services is not allowable. Purchase of supplies and materials to attend to students' registrations is not allowable. Registration is something that should happen and be available in resources for all students. So these funds should not be utilized for that purpose. Provide MLP, which is your multilingual learner program specialist or teacher, or classroom teacher with coursework to obtain ESOL endorsement or ESOL certification. If they are already hired as a multilingual learner teacher, as you may already know, the SCDE does not require a multilingual learner specialist to have an ESOL certification. We only need you to have the grade level certification. However, check your district's policies because most districts do require your teachers to have an ESOL certification or to be working towards one. If your district requires you to have an ESOL certification, these funds cannot be utilized to support any teacher acquiring that certification. Okay? And just a quick little point in there. ESOL endorsement and ESOL certification are two different things. They are just the start of a process when you're looking at ESOL endorsement. ESOL endorsement does not extend your license. ESOL endorsement will allow you to have that additional training. So if you have a teacher who has a license of A6, that teacher gets an ESOL endorsement, that teacher can only work in a multilingual learner specialist position in a district that requires certification. That teacher can only work with students that have K6. They will not be allowed to work with students beyond her license certification because she's not licensed to teach 7 through 12th grade. An ESOL certification gives you a license from K-12. Then that's when a multilingual teacher would be able to work throughout elementary, middle, and high school. Just a little friendly reminder for all of you. It cannot be used for adult ESOL program if your district already offers an ESOL for adult ESOL program. If your district doesn't, then potentially you may be able to utilize these funds for that. Excessive costs for materials and supplies that take away from direct student services. So don't start purchasing all of these extra tools and online programs and put students aside and just that's the instruction that they are receiving. We have seen, as an example in of Rosetta Stone being utilized, as that is the language acquisition instruction, and that's the only thing that students are receiving. That is not what this is for. So ensuring that instruction is still there for students. And I know it's a cute word at the bottom, right? Remodeling. We can use for paints and purchasing new furniture and trying to change things and buying little paintings or vases or things. You're not remodeling. So this is not something that you can utilize immigrants funds for. Okay? Any questions so far? Yes. Correct. Yes. So it is different. It is different, and we did that on purpose to make sure it is there, because a lot of people get confused and think it's just the ML identification they're so used to. But yes, ML identification, we don't start really, students start getting screened when they are in that pre-K section, and then it starts really in kindergarten. So they get screened early on, and then services start there. Can students receive ML services early on in pre-K? Yes, they can. If the district has the capability and the resources to be able to provide that, yes, they can. But for immigrants, we are looking for something different. It's just for those fundings, it starts at age 3. If they are born outside of the United States, if they have, what did I say it was? Born outside of the United States, and I have to go back to
3 years.
Haven't been here for 3 cumulative years, then yes, then they are part of it. So it doesn't work the same way because of that concept that not all immigrant students are multilingual learners, and not all multilingual learners are immigrant students. Okay, so they have 2 different processes. Okay. Right, so that's why it is so critical to have all of the information in PowerSchool entered accordingly to the information you're getting from all of your students. So because there's no assessment with immigrant students, it's basically whatever was entered and then a report is pulled. It is very, very important to have all that information entered accurately. And then for your MLs, the same concept. If you have a potential ML, you have to make sure that home language surveys are being completed, again, only one time at doing the initial enrollment. We don't have the home language survey being completed every year when they keep returning for enrollment. It is only one time. The only section of the home language survey section that gets completed every year during enrollment is the portion for parents. What languages parents feel most comfortable communicating with. So oral communication that goes home, and written communication that goes home. So the language proficiency of the parent may change from year to year, but we don't use the home language survey for the student for any other purpose rather than just that initial identification. So they have a language other than English, then they move to the second step to be able to potentially be identified through the ELP screening assessment. Okay? All right, so these are just going to be some timeline reminders. How am I doing with time? I'm going to give you great time to ask questions. And we'll work with a lot of questions later, especially about accountability. I'm going to toss everything to Mr. Taylor. Sounds good. All right, so just the common acronyms for you to just be sure you are familiar with them. You hear us talk about GEMS and GAPs and GAN and ATCs and PSAs and IDCs and all of those fun things. So just a friendly reminder, GEMS is the platform where you're going to complete your how you want to spend the subgrants that you received allocation for. That's the one that we review, making sure that your narratives are completed and have everything that needs to have in that particular subsection. We do have a document I'm going to share with you a little bit later at the end of the day, not the day, but the session, to just give you a walkthrough, a step-by-step on how to complete every single one of them and all of the subgrants that we have. GAPs is where you're putting all of those funds based on the codes that you entered in GEMS. It will give you a little budget overview. That number needs to match. Just remember that gaps needs to match gems, not gems needs to match gaps. So if you submit something in gaps and we look at it and it does not match gems, guess what's going to happen? I'm going to send it back to you for revision. Sometimes if it's just a very small change, I'm able to just go in and kind of give you a wink, and tell you exactly what was missing. But if there are too many changes, then all you're going to get, I'm so sorry, is revisions are needed. If your information gaps is not matching gems. And all you have to do is go into gems, budget overview, and you will see the full amounts for each budget line that you need to enter in gaps. Okay, so you don't need to recalculate everything. GANs will always be received after a GEMS application is approved. Once you receive the approval, immediately after you will receive your GAN. Your GAN needs to be signed and send it back to us before we'll take a peek on whatever it is that you entered in gaps. We will not approve gaps if we don't have a signed GANs. Okay, the GAN has to be signed and submitted to our office. And then you have your ATCs and your PSAs. Those are embedded in your GEMS application. We don't send those documents aside. They are all embedded in your GEMS application. So you can have those downloaded, signed, and uploaded back into the GEMS application. So when we review your GEMS application, it's all there, all together. And then your indirect costs. We have the spreadsheet for each one of them, for each district, for each of your subgrants, that shows you exactly which is the indirect cost for each one of your districts.
Can you just repeat that again? What is going into GEMS?
GEMS already has embedded your ATCs and your PSAs. The documents are already embedded there, so we don't send them separately to you. You can just, once you get into that, your GEMS application, you can download it, have it signed, and upload it, that document into GEMS already signed. You don't have to send them to us separately on an email. The only thing you're going to receive separately outside of GEMS is the GAN. Once we approve your GEMS, we'll send you the GAN to be signed. You will sign the GAN and you email it back to us, to our office.
We're not uploading that in.
You will upload it after you have signed, submitted to us. Then you will be doing an amendment later on to include just your signed GAN. Okay? The big thing is also, the other thing that you will have in there is going to be a few other documents, which I'll share and talk about them in a little bit when they should be uploaded. But the key here is never upload any documents that requires a signature without a signature. Okay. So here's just a quick little timeline of where we are with all of the subgrants that are open at the moment. Right now we have your FY24 ML and Immigrant. That is kind of, as you see, towards the end is your orange little circle there. It is towards the end where your districts are spending down those funds and making claims into gaps. And then some of them are already making amends in GEMS gaps for us to be able to review it. So if there are any changes that your district needs to make, then an amendment will be submitted. And we're talking about right now for FY24 ML and Immigrant. Then we have FY25 ML. That one is your lovely purple. Some districts are finishing up those GEMS applications because we had to review and send them back. But if you look at the spreadsheet, I think we only have maybe one or two that are finishing up. So everyone is already have passed that section. So you already have received it approved. The application was already approved. Again, has already been sent to you. You already submitted back to us. And you are probably working now on gaps. Some of you already finished gaps and the gaps has already been approved. So you may be a little further into that timeline. FY25 Immigrant, we made all of the changes into the application. We had a little sit and chat kind of to share all of that information that was a little bit different from previous years to keep you updated. And we have already shared and opened the application with all of the districts. So all of you are already completing determining purposefully how you are going to utilize those immigrant funds to support immigrant students. And then we'll go through the same process, revisions, and so on and so forth. And here again, just showing the whole process. We are kind of at the end, right, on our lovely February, March, where we are looking at those funds, making sure that you have your immigrant applications are starting in the process. FY23, the obligation letters already have been sent if they needed to, and then we have any additional reobligation if applicable. And as of right now, we are not in that process. So FY25, Title III Part A, just remember, as you're completing your FY25 immigrant application, that you do not include vendor names. You need to be a little bit more vague in that sense, okay? Vague does not mean when we read your application, I have no idea what you're purchasing. That's not what vague means. It's just not giving me specifics of the name of the vendors, okay? If we don't know what it is or the vendor name is there, your application is going to go back and we're going to just ask you and try to guide you in those questions. It's not a, aha, I got you. That's not what it is. We really want to give you the opportunity to just have the information that you needed there. And these are just some reminder updates. I'm not going to go through those. You will have full access to this presentation if not already. It should be already uploaded to the Hoover app, so you have access to that. Yes.
So when you talk about the vendor names, like when you get a description of your ML program, you may have programs that the district's purchasing out of local funds, and so when you ask us to describe the instructional model, I'm not quite sure. I know for procurement reasons we can't put it in the activity, but when you're describing things like, access or WID standards, to me those are part of your programmatic changes, not procurement.
Correct, and that one, it's allowable. We are not giving any issues with, at least we were not told to. So, for example, WIDA, Power School, letters, all of those are already part of the state in that programmatic. We are not sending those back for those. We'll send those back if you put, we are purchasing an online platform called Rosetta Stone to be able to provide the services to this and this and this for this particular reason. Just remove Rosetta Stone. It is going to be, for example, a online platform that focuses on speaking, language domain for the students to enhance this, this, and this. The description just needs to still tell us what that is for, the intention of that purchase, but just not the name of the purchase. Okay, and then we have the two spreadsheets. You will have access to them, the ML spreadsheet and the immigrant spreadsheet. So based on all of the allocations, who qualified, if we are already approved, if we're not, if we are in revision, we try to upload and update this spreadsheet as much as possible. Please know that once you submit an application for revision to the SCDE, applications are reviewed in the way that they come in, right, at the same order. Do not send us, and I'm going to say this now, please, do not send us an email and say, I just submitted the ML application, or I just submitted the immigrant application. We already get automated email notification for every single application and every single movement that happens in the application. But as receiving those emails and having to attend to your emails as much as possible may delay some of the revisions. So just making sure, don't bother, going to your happy and trying to send us an email for that. Okay. And just a friendly reminder also, you probably saw on the earlier slides, we do have a shared email. You are going to get a quicker response if you reply and send us messages to the Title III NLP email address rather than sending it to me or sending it to Murphy. And part of the reason why is, as of this year, we're trying to really just focus on those, knowing that that is all of you sending us emails, and we are looking at our personal ones, sort of, to be more of those emails that are coming from outside sources or emails that are coming from in-house within the SCDE. So we try to give priority to the team emails rather than to ours. So you will see sometimes a much longer delay of responses if you're sending it to our personal emails. All right, then we have the 24. Here's just the reminders of your obligation and liquidation dates, and ensuring that everything is matching gaps, is matching gems, and then continue to spend down the sub-grant. We also have the spreadsheet if you're curious to see your FY24. If you're sending amendments, there are not going to be an update to the spreadsheet. Okay, we only do that for the initial application until it gets approved. Consolidation, we do have just a little friendly reminder. If you are in a consortium and so on and so forth, we're not going to go so much into details. It's just really giving you that information. And again, about reallocation of funds for FY23 only if it's applicable to you. So we're going to kind of skip this slide for a bit. And then we're looking at equitable services. Here's some contact information for that. Just ensuring that your district has all of the documentation. If your district has private schools, that you do serve private schools. So ensuring that you have all of the documentation of communication and potentially if the students in that school will utilize the ML or the immigrant funds. Here we have the equitable service for private school students and teachers document. This is just a simple consultation form for your resources. Again, as you can see, it's not a document that is fully updated yet. We are going to be updating a lot of our forms due to the SCDE reporting. And so just know if you are looking at these types of documents with certain logos like these, that they are still already not updated. If they do have the SCDE new logo, that means that they have been updated already. So before you're utilizing these, just maybe reach out to us if we need to update those, okay? There are a lot of forms to update. Non-competitive procurement forms, just ensure that the procurement forms are fully completed. There is a new form, and not so new. It's been there for almost 2 years, 3 years maybe. But we've been getting some of these that have been out for 5, 10 years with really a lot of old information. So please make sure if you need to know which one is the updated version, it has 2 reviewer signatures. If it is completed, we review it. It needs to be in your application, and therefore we'll be able to review it, approve it, and send it back to you. So do not send things to us if it's not yet in your application, okay? The other thing as well is don't upload your procurement form to GEMS if it has not been submitted to our office and approved. Once it is approved and signed by our office, that's when you are able to go back into GEMS and upload this form. But don't upload it in there just because you have submitted to us. Then you're going to have 2 steps because we have to send the application back to you. Okay. We are towards the end, just maybe 3 more slides and we are all set. So here's a couple things. So let's go back to before we get to our test. Just know we have done a sip and chat for the ML application, and we have for the subgrant, and we have done one for Immigrant subgrant. We do record those, and we do have slides for those, so we uploaded them in here attached to this presentation if you would like to go through them as well. So just allowing you to have an additional resource with more details about the GEMS application and any changes that has happened already. This is the document. As you can see, the first word up there is draft. It is currently a draft because we have been updating with everything that is going on now. This is just really your document for all Title III subgrant finance things. It has step-by-step instructions on how to complete the immigrant application, how to complete your immigrant application. It has a lot more details on allowable and unallowable activities, examples, and so on and so forth. So it is a pretty extensive document, but we're trying to make it as user-friendly as possible with a lot of screenshots of the application so that you are able to really navigate that easily. If you have any questions regarding this document, feel free to let us know. We also have this document as set as commenters, where you are all able to go in and give us comments to be able to help us build a much better financing document for you to meet your purposes and your needs. All right, so last thing, let's test your knowledge based on what we talked about in this session. Title III, Part A funding must follow supplement, not supplant requirements. True or false? Yes. Title III, Part A fundings has 3 subawards for LEAs. False. It only 2. Multilingual learners and immigrant. Title III, Part A funding can be used for required translation and interpretation services. So I'm going to put a false and yes, because it depends, right? We could potentially use on house shoes and that additional things you're putting in there for students. Districts that receive less than 10,000 in allocation must form a consortium to accept funding. I put it yes and a no. Why is it a yes and a no? Because if they choose to waive funds, they don't need to, right? It's a little tricky one. So yes, they do if they want to accept the funds, but if they choose to waive, it does not matter how much they have been allocated. All right, we got towards the end. Literally, I feel like I went over 4 minutes. I'm so sorry, but I'm going to stick around for questions. But before I do, I know that we have a little raffle to go through.
I know I missed some people up front here, so really quick. And
He's going with that.
About accountability, but I work a lot in accountability, and I'm just wondering if what I think about accountability and what you just discussed for immigrant status by way of funding, right, is aligned at the state level. Because I get a lot of questions, and I'm new to the state, so I get a lot of questions about if a student was here in kindergarten and now they're in 10th grade, are they recently arrived in now when you think about accountability? So in my brain, I'm thinking what you just told us for immigrant status and funding, right? We tell them they're not recently arrived because they were here in kindergarten.
Right. So with immigrant funding, it's not about them being recently arrived.
Okay.
It is based on how many cumulative years they have been in the U.S. Okay. So if they were here in kindergarten and they left and they returned in 10th grade,
right? They still count for us.
They are going to count. And they are qualifying immigrant students of that district. You're welcome.
Only language. Are we going to have those grants or that time money?
yeah, so there are a lot of it's okay. There are a lot of changes going on, right? But as far as we know, how we're operating as an agency, those actual programs still exist and are in place under the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is why we're here today. And it's business as usual as far as we're concerned at this time. That's all we're working with. So, like the timelines you see, those are still in place. That's what we're operating under still.
I was scared.
Yeah.